The dust on Adelaide Barrett's black mourning dress had barely settled from burying her third husband when the whispers started again through the streets of Wichita, Kansas, in the summer of 1878. She stood at the edge of the cemetery, 24 years old and widowed 3 times over, watching the handful of people who had dared attend the funeral scatter like tumbleweeds in a strong wind. And she knew with a sinking certainty that her life in this town had become something darker than mere loneliness. The first husband, Thomas, had been a banker's son with soft hands and softer promises. They married when Adelaide was 18, fresh-faced and hopeful, believing that love could bloom even in an arranged match between families. 6 months later, Thomas fell from his horse during a routine ride to check the family's property lines. The horse came back without a scratch. Thomas never came back at all. The second husband, James, was a cattle rancher who courted her with wildflowers and patient kindness, convinced that the first death was nothing more than tragic coincidence. Adelaide had been 21 then, desperate to prove the murmurs wrong, desperate to have a normal life. James lasted 8 months before a supposedly secured barn beam fell on him while he was checking the livestock. The beam had been inspected just days before. The inspector could find no explanation for why it gave way. The third husband, Robert, was a shopkeeper who believed neither in curses nor superstition. He was practical, logical, and utterly certain that marrying Adelaide was simply marrying a woman with extraordinarily bad luck. They wed when she was 23. Robert died 4 months ago from a snake bite while walking the well-traveled main street of Wichita at high noon. No one could explain what a rattlesnake was doing in the middle of town, far from its natural habitat. Now Adelaide walked back to the small house she had shared with Robert, feeling the weight of every stare, every hastily made sign against evil, every mother pulling her child closer as she passed. The house was paid for at least. Robert had been generous in his will, and her previous husband's families had provided enough that she would not starve. But money could not buy back her reputation. Money could not erase the word that followed her everywhere now: cursed. She spent the evening cleaning, scrubbing floors that were already clean, washing windows that already shone, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from dwelling on the impossible situation she found herself in. Adelaide was not naive. She knew what the town thought. She knew what the town wanted. They wanted her to leave, to take her supposed curse somewhere else, to stop being a reminder that sometimes terrible things happened without reason or explanation. But Wichita was her home. She had been born here, had grown up running through these streets, had dreamed her childhood dreams beneath this vast Kansas sky. Why should she leave because of accidents, because of coincidence, because of fear? The knock on her door came just after sunset. Adelaide dried her hands on her apron and opened it to find Mrs. Thornton, the Reverend's wife, standing on her porch with a basket covered in cloth. "I brought you some supper," Mrs. Thornton said, her voice kind but her eyes troubled. "I know today was difficult." "Thank you," Adelaide said, taking the basket. "Would you like to come in?" Mrs. Thornton hesitated, and in that hesitation, Adelaide saw the truth. Even this kind woman, who had known Adelaide since childhood, who had taught her Sunday school lessons and braided her hair, even she was afraid. "I should get back," Mrs. Thornton said finally. "But Adelaide, dear, I want you to know that I do not believe you are cursed. I believe you have suffered terrible misfortune, and I am praying for you." "Thank you," Adelaide whispered, but the words felt hollow. Prayer had not saved any of her husbands. Prayer had not stopped the town from turning against her. The days blurred together after that. Adelaide kept to herself, venturing out only for necessities. enduring the silence that fell whenever she entered the general store, the way conversations stopped and people found urgent business elsewhere. She was 24 years old and already felt ancient, worn down by grief and isolation. 3 weeks after Robert's funeral, Adelaide was in the general store buying flour and coffee when she heard the voice that would change everything. "I will take 2 pounds of that coffee as well," a man said, his voice carrying a slight drawl that marked him as someone from further south. "And I am looking for work. I hear there might be some ranches around here that need experienced hands." Adelaide glanced up from counting her coins and found herself looking at a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of the summer sky. He wore typical cowboy attire: worn denim pants, a faded blue shirt, scuffed boots, and a hat that had seen better days. But there was something in his bearing, a confidence mixed with genuine friendliness, that made him stand out. "You might try the Patterson Ranch," the store owner, Mr. Hendricks, said carefully. "They are always looking for good workers." "Much obliged," the man said, tipping his hat. His gaze swept the store and landed on Adelaide. For a moment their eyes met, and Adelaide saw something she had not seen in a long time: simple, uncomplicated acknowledgement. No fear, no suspicion, just a stranger's polite recognition of another human being. Then Mr. Hendricks cleared his throat loudly, and the man turned back to complete his purchase. Adelaide finished her own transaction and left quickly, feeling the familiar burn of tears threatening. She would not cry. She had done enough crying to last a lifetime. That evening, Adelaide sat on her small porch watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Summer in Kansas was hot and often brutal, but the evenings sometimes brought relief, a gentle breeze that made the heat bearable. She was shelling peas for her supper when she heard footsteps and looked up to see the same cowboy from the general store walking down her street. He was not alone. Mr. Patterson, owner of the largest ranch in the area, walked beside him, deep in conversation. As they passed her house, Mr. Patterson's eyes flicked toward Adelaide and his expression hardened. He said something to the cowboy, low and urgent. Adelaide could not hear the words, but she could guess their content. To her surprise, the cowboy stopped walking. He turned to face Mr. Patterson fully, and although Adelaide could not hear everything, snippets of the conversation drifted to her on the evening breeze. "Appreciate the warning, sir, but I make my own judgments about people. 3 men dead, boy 3. Coincidence happens, and gossip is often crueler than truth. Your funeral, literally." The cowboy's response was too quiet to hear, but whatever he said made Mr. Patterson throw up his hands in frustration before stalking away. The cowboy stood there for a moment, watching the older man leave. Then he turned and looked directly at Adelaide. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the dusty street. Then, to Adelaide's complete shock, the cowboy tipped his hat to her with a slight smile and continued on his way. Adelaide's hands trembled as she went back to shelling peas. Who was this stranger who seemed utterly unafraid of her supposed curse? And more importantly, why did his simple gesture of respect make her heart pound in her chest? She learned his name the next day from Mrs. Thornton, who stopped by with another basket of food and a worried expression. "That new cowboy, Wade Johnson, he is asking about you," Mrs. Thornton said, setting the basket on Adelaide's kitchen table. "Mr. Patterson told him about your situation, but apparently the man does not believe in curses. I wanted to warn you. I do not know what his intentions are." "Wade Johnson," Adelaide repeated, tasting the name. "Where is he from?" "Texas, I believe." "He has been working his way north, taking jobs at different ranches. Mr. Patterson hired him despite his foolishness about the curse, because apparently the man is excellent with horses and they need the help." Mrs. Thornton reached across the table and gripped Adelaide's hand. "Be careful, dear. I know you are lonely, but another man—" "I am not looking for another husband," Adelaide said sharply. "I am not looking for any man. I have learned my lesson 3 times over." But even as she said the words, she found herself thinking about those sky-blue eyes and that slight smile. She found herself wondering what kind of man openly defied local superstition for someone he did not even know. The answer came 2 days later when Wade Johnson knocked on her door in broad daylight, holding his hat in his hands and wearing that same calm, friendly expression. "Mrs. Barrett," he said when she opened the door, "I hope I am not intruding. My name is Wade Johnson, and I wanted to introduce myself properly. I am new to Wichita, and I figure it is good manners to know one's neighbors." Adelaide stared at him, momentarily speechless. No one had willingly approached her house since Robert's death. No one had introduced themselves with such normalcy, as if she were any other neighbor and not the cursed widow everyone avoided. "I know who you are," she finally managed. "The whole town knows who you are by now. The crazy cowboy who does not believe in curses." Wade's smile widened slightly. "I prefer to think of myself as sensible rather than crazy, but I suppose that's a matter of perspective. May I speak plainly, Mrs. Barrett? I suspect you will regardless of my answer." "Fair point." He leaned against her porch railing, completely at ease. "I have been around enough to know that gossip often has very little to do with truth. I have heard what people say about you. I have also done some thinking of my own. A man falls from a horse. That happens every day in the West. Another man is killed by a falling beam. Tragic but not unheard of in ranching country. A third is bitten by a snake, and while that is unusual in town, snakes do not check city limits before they slither somewhere. 3 accidents do not make a curse. They make bad luck, terrible timing, and profound sadness, but not a curse." Adelaide felt something crack inside her chest, some wall she had built around her heart to protect herself from further pain. Here was someone who did not look at her with fear or suspicion, but with logic and compassion. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I figure you could use a friend," Wade said simply. "And because I hate seeing someone punished for things beyond their control. I know what it is like to be judged unfairly, Mrs. Barrett. Maybe not in the same way, but I know the feeling. You do not even know me. Then maybe we should rectify that." He pushed away from the railing and settled his hat back on his head. "I work at the Patterson Ranch, dawn until dusk most days, but I am free on Sundays after church. If you would be willing, I would like to call on you, properly and respectfully, just to talk, to get to know each other. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people who could maybe use some friendly conversation." "The town will talk," Adelaide said. "The town already talks." "I do not much care what they say, Mrs. Barrett. I care about doing what I think is right, and I think spending time with you would be right, if you are willing." Adelaide looked into those honest blue eyes and made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "Sunday afternoon," she said. "I will make lemonade." Wade's smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "I will look forward to it, Mrs. Barrett." "Adelaide," she said. "If we are going to be friends, you should call me Adelaide." "Adelaide," he repeated, and the way he said her name made something warm unfurl in her chest. "I will see you Sunday, then." She watched him walk away, his long stride confident and unhurried, and for the first time in months, Adelaide felt something other than grief and loneliness. She felt hope. Sunday came with typical Kansas summer heat, the kind that made the air shimmer and turned the ground hard as stone. Adelaide woke early and spent the morning in a frenzy of preparation she did not want to examine too closely. She told herself she was simply being a good hostess, that the careful preparation of lemonade and the baking of molasses cookies had nothing to do with the way her heart raced when she thought of Wade Johnson. She wore a simple dress of pale blue cotton, one of the few dresses she owned that was not black morning attire. She had spent a year and a half in mourning clothes, and while she knew the town would judge her for setting them aside, she found she did not care anymore. Wade was right. The town already talked. She might as well give them something new to discuss. Wade arrived promptly at 2 o'clock, freshly washed and wearing what were clearly his best clothes. Dark pants without patches, a clean white shirt, and a vest that had seen care and maintenance. He had even trimmed his beard, which Adelaide found endearing. "You look lovely," he said when she opened the door, and the compliment was so genuine and unexpected that Adelaide felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Thank you. Please come in." They sat on her porch, sipping lemonade and eating cookies, and talked. Wade told her about growing up in Texas, the youngest of 4 brothers, how his father had been a ranch foreman and taught all his sons the trade. He spoke of his mother's death when he was 15, how his father had followed her within a year, dead of heartbreak as much as illness. He described working his way north, learning from different ranches, different bosses, collecting skills and stories. "I always figured I would settle down eventually," Wade said, gazing out at the quiet street. "Find a place that felt right, maybe start my own small spread. Nothing fancy, just enough land for some cattle and horses, a good house, a life built with my own hands." "Why Kansas?" Adelaide asked. "Why Wichita?" Wade turned to look at her, and there was something in his expression that made her breath catch. "I do not know yet. Maybe I was meant to be here. Maybe fate has a sense of direction even when we do not." Adelaide told him about her own life, the childhood in Wichita, her parents who had died of influenza when she was 17, leaving her alone and vulnerable to her uncle's well-meaning but ultimately disastrous matchmaking. She told him about her 3 husbands, really told him, sharing details she had never voiced before. "Thomas was kind but distant," she said quietly. "I think he married me because our families expected it, not because he loved me. James was warmer, more genuine. I think I could have loved him truly, given time. And Robert. Robert was a good man who took a chance on me when everyone else saw me as tainted. I cared for him deeply, but I am not sure it was love, not the kind of love I always dreamed about." "What kind of love did you dream about?" Wade asked. Adelaide looked at him, this man who had appeared in her life like an answered prayer she had not known to speak. "The kind that feels inevitable. The kind where you look at someone and know, deep in your bones, that they see you truly. Not the face you show the world, not the reputation or the gossip, but the real person underneath everything else, the kind of love that makes you brave." "I think that kind of love exists," Wade said softly. "I think it is rare and precious, but I think it exists." They talked until the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and orange. When Wade finally stood to leave, he took Adelaide's hand in his calloused palm warm and solid against her skin. "May I call on you again?" he asked. "I know it is forward, and I know the situation is complicated, but Adelaide, I would very much like to spend more time with you." "The town will say terrible things," Adelaide warned. "They will say I have set my sights on a 4th victim. They will tell you to run while you still can." "Let them talk." Wade squeezed her hand gently. "I am not afraid of gossip, and I am not afraid of bad luck. I am only afraid of missing out on knowing an extraordinary woman because I let fear make my decisions. You barely know me. Then give me the chance to know you better. That is all I am asking." Adelaide knew this was madness. She knew that letting this man into her life was dangerous, not because of any curse, but because her heart was already far too invested in his smile, his kindness, his unwavering belief in her innocence. But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of living in fear. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you may call on me again." Wade's smile could have lit the entire prairie. "Wednesday evening, then. I will bring supper so you do not have to cook." True to his word, Wade appeared on Wednesday evening carrying a basket from the hotel restaurant: fried chicken, fresh bread, potato salad, and apple pie. They ate in Adelaide's small dining room and talked about everything and nothing. Wade shared stories from his ranch work, making her laugh with his descriptions of stubborn horses and eccentric cattle. Adelaide talked about her love of reading, how she had devoured every book she could get her hands on as a child, how she still read by lamplight every night. "What are you reading now?" Wade asked. "Jane Eyre. Have you read it?" "Cannot say that I have." "What is it about?" Adelaide found herself explaining the story of Jane and Mr. Rochester, the governess and the gentleman with secrets, and Wade listened with genuine interest, asking questions and making observations that showed he was truly paying attention. As the weeks passed, Wade's visits became the cornerstone of Adelaide's life. He came 3 or 4 times a week, always respectful, always proper, but there was no denying the growing connection between them. They talked about everything: their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future. Wade shared his ambition to own his own ranch someday, his love for working with horses, his desire for a family of his own. Adelaide admitted her longing for children, something that had never happened in any of her brief marriages, her wish for a life that felt truly hers rather than something imposed by circumstances and tragedy. The town, predictably, was horrified. Adelaide heard the whispers every time she ventured out, saw the pointing fingers and shocked expressions. Mrs. Thornton visited less frequently, her concern growing with each of Wade's visits. "Adelaide, please," she begged one afternoon. "Please think about what you are doing. This man, he seems nice, but what if?" "What if what?" Adelaide asked, an edge of anger creeping into her voice. "What if he dies like the others? What if I am actually cursed? Mrs. Thornton, I have spent the last year living in fear, living according to what other people think I should do. I am tired of it. Wade makes me happy. For the first time in years, I wake up excited about the day ahead. Is that so wrong? Of course not, dear, but at what cost? If something happens to him, then it happens and I will grieve and the town will say they told me so. But I would rather have this happiness now than spend the rest of my life alone and safe and utterly miserable." Mrs. Thornton left shaking her head, and Adelaide knew she had lost one of her last allies in Wichita. But when Wade arrived that evening and swept her into an impromptu dance in her kitchen, humming a waltz tune while they spun around the small space, Adelaide could not bring herself to regret her choice. 2 months after their first conversation on her porch, Wade took Adelaide on a picnic outside of town. He borrowed a wagon from the ranch and drove them out to a spot by the Arkansas River where cottonwood trees provided shade, and the sound of flowing water created a peaceful backdrop. Adelaide had made fried chicken and biscuits, and Wade had somehow procured fresh strawberries, a rare treat in late summer. They sat on a blanket and ate and talked, and Adelaide felt more content than she had in her entire life. This was what she had always wanted: easy companionship, genuine affection, the sense of being with someone who truly understood her. "Adelaide," Wade said after they had finished eating, "I need to tell you something." The serious tone of his voice made her heart clench with sudden fear. "What is it?" Wade took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I am falling in love with you." "No, that is not quite right. I think I have already fallen. I look at you and I see my future. I see the life I want to build." I see everything I have been searching for without knowing what I was searching for. Adelaide's breath caught in her throat. Wade, I know it is fast. I know the situation is complicated. I know the whole town thinks I am insane for even talking to you, let alone courting you. But Adelaide, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You are kind and strong and resilient. You have faced tragedy that would break most people, and you are still here, still hoping, still brave enough to let someone new into your life. That takes courage I can only admire. I am afraid, Adelaide admitted, tears welling in her eyes. Wade, I am so afraid. Every man who has married me has died. What if there really is something wrong with me? What if I am cursed and I am too selfish to see it? I could not bear it if something happened to you. Wade moved closer, cupping her face gently in his hands. Adelaide Barrett, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not cursed. You have suffered terrible coincidences, but that does not make you dangerous. I am choosing this with my eyes wide open. I am choosing you. The town will never accept us, she whispered. Then we will leave Wichita. I have been saving money. I have enough to buy a small piece of land somewhere else, somewhere we can start fresh. Colorado, maybe, or Montana. Somewhere no one knows your history, where we can just be Wade and Adelaide, building a life together. You would do that. You would give up everything here. Adelaide, I am a cowboy. I have been drifting for 5 years, working different ranches, never putting down roots. I have nothing to give up here except a job I can find anywhere. But you were born here. This is your home. I am asking you to give up much more than I am. Adelaide looked into his eyes and saw her future written there. She saw a small ranch under a wide sky, saw children playing in a yard, saw Wade coming home each evening and pulling her into his arms. She saw love and safety and happiness. She saw everything she had always wanted. Wichita has not been my home for a long time, she said. It has been a prison. Wade Johnson, if you are truly willing to risk what the town calls a curse, then yes. Yes, I will leave with you. Yes, I will build a life with you. Yes, I love you too. Wade's smile was incandescent. He leaned forward and kissed her, soft and sweet, and Adelaide felt as if every broken piece of her heart was suddenly mending, knitting back together stronger than before. They agreed to keep their plans quiet while Wade saved more money and made arrangements. Adelaide began sorting through her belongings, deciding what to keep and what to sell. The house had been Robert's and she had no attachment to it. Most of the furniture could be sold. She would keep only what mattered: her books, her mother's china, a few pieces of clothing. But secrets in small towns are hard to keep, and within 2 weeks, the whole town knew that Adelaide and Wade were planning to marry and leave Wichita. The reaction was explosive. The town council called an emergency meeting and sent a delegation to speak with Wade. Adelaide watched from her window as 3 stern-faced men cornered him outside the general store, their voices raised in agitation. She could not hear the words but could guess the content. They were trying to save him from himself, trying to make him see reason before it was too late. Wade listened politely, then shook his head and walked away, leaving the men standing in the street looking frustrated and angry. That evening, someone threw a rock through Adelaide's front window with a note tied to it. "Leave now before you kill again." Wade found her sweeping up the glass, tears streaming down her face. He did not say a word, just pulled her into his arms and held her while she sobbed. "We can leave sooner," he said. "I have enough saved. We do not need to wait." "I want to marry you first," Adelaide said fiercely. "I want to marry you here in Wichita in front of everyone. I want them to see that I am not ashamed, that you are not afraid. I want to prove them all wrong." Wade pulled back to look at her. "Are you sure?" "Adelaide, we do not have to prove anything to anyone." "Yes, we do. Not for them, but for us. I need to know that we can stand up to this, that we are strong enough together to face down the fear and the gossip. Please, Wade." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, we will do it your way. We will get married here, and then we will leave for our new life together." Finding someone willing to perform the ceremony proved challenging. The Reverend refused outright, citing concerns for Wade's safety and his own conscience. Two other ministers in nearby communities also declined. Finally, Wade found a circuit judge passing through Wichita who agreed to perform a civil ceremony, either unaware of Adelaide's reputation or unconcerned by it. They set the date for the first week of October, when the brutal summer heat would have broken and the prairie would be touched with autumn gold. Adelaide sewed herself a new dress from pale green fabric, the color of new leaves in spring. It was not white and it was not traditional, but it felt right. It felt like hope. The morning of the wedding, Adelaide woke to find another note shoved under her door. "Do not do this. Blood will be on your hands." She crumpled it up and threw it in the fireplace. She had come too far, survived too much, to let fear win now. Wade arrived at noon, driving a wagon decorated with wildflowers he must have spent hours collecting from the prairie. He wore a new suit, probably the first new clothes he had bought in years, and his face was lit with uncomplicated joy. "Ready to become Mrs. Johnson?" he asked, offering his hand to help her into the wagon. "More ready than I have ever been for anything," Adelaide replied. They drove to the small courthouse where the judge was waiting. Adelaide had hoped that maybe a few friendly faces would appear, that someone would stand as witness to their happiness. But when they arrived, the street in front of the courthouse was lined with people. For a moment, Adelaide's heart soared, thinking they had come to show support. Then she saw their faces, angry, frightened, accusatory. They had come to protest, to make one last attempt to stop what they saw as inevitable tragedy. "Wade Johnson, do not go through with this," Mr. Patterson shouted from the crowd. "It is not too late to come to your senses. She is cursed." Someone else yelled, "You will be dead within a year, murderer." A woman shrieked, and Adelaide flinched. Wade's hand found hers, squeezing tight. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "They do not matter. The only thing that matters is us." They climbed down from the wagon and walked through the hostile crowd toward the courthouse doors. Someone spat at Adelaide's feet. Another person grabbed Wade's arm, pleading with him to reconsider. But Wade kept walking, his hand never leaving Adelaide's, his spine straight and his head high. Inside the courthouse, the judge was waiting with an expression of deep discomfort. "Folks," he said, "I have to say I am having second thoughts about this. That crowd outside seems mighty upset." "We are both consenting adults," Wade said firmly. "We want to be married." "That is all that matters in the eyes of the law, correct?" the judge sighed. "I suppose so. Do you have witnesses?" Adelaide's heart sank. In all their planning, they had forgotten about witnesses. No one in Wichita would stand up for them. Then the courthouse door opened and Mrs. Thornton walked in, followed by her husband, Reverend Thornton. Adelaide stared in shock. "We will witness," Mrs. Thornton said quietly. "I do not claim to understand this, and I am terrified for you both, but I have known Adelaide since she was a little girl. If this is truly what she wants, I will not let her face it alone." Adelaide burst into tears and hugged the older woman tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." The ceremony was brief and matter-of-fact, the judge rushing through the words as if eager to be done with the whole affair. But when Wade slipped a simple gold band on Adelaide's finger and said, "I do," his voice was strong and certain. And when Adelaide said the same, she felt as if she were casting off chains that had bound her for years. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the judge said. "You may kiss your bride, and then I suggest you both get out of town before that crowd gets any more riled up." Wade pulled Adelaide close and kissed her deeply, and for a moment the world fell away. There was no angry crowd, no fear, no curse. There was only this man who had chosen her, who loved her, who was now her husband. They broke apart, smiling at each other, and Adelaide felt truly happy for the first time in years. They thanked Mrs. Thornton and the Reverend, then hurried out to their wagon. The crowd was still there, muttering and hostile, but they parted to let Wade and Adelaide through. Perhaps it was the finality of the deed, the sense that there was nothing more to be done. The marriage had happened. Now they would wait for the inevitable tragedy. Wade drove the wagon quickly through Wichita streets to Adelaide's house, where their packed belongings waited. They had arranged for everything to be sold except what they could carry, and within an hour the wagon was loaded and ready. Adelaide took one last look at the house where she had lived as three different men's wife, where she had known brief happiness and profound grief, and felt nothing but relief to be leaving it behind. "No regrets?" Wade asked as they drove out of Wichita. Adelaide looked at her new husband, this brave, stubborn, wonderful man who had risked everything for love. Not a single one. They traveled north and west, making their way slowly through Kansas toward Colorado. Wade had heard of land available for homesteading near a small town called Silver Creek, nestled in the foothills where the prairie began its climb toward the Rocky Mountains. It would be hard work, starting from nothing, but they would be together and far from the poisonous gossip of Wichita. The journey took 2 weeks, camping under the stars, cooking over open fires, learning the rhythms of each other's presence. Adelaide had never felt so free. Away from Wichita, away from the weight of her reputation, she could simply be herself. She could laugh without worrying about what people thought. She could hold Wade's hand, kiss him in broad daylight, dream about their future without fear. Wade was an attentive, patient husband. Their wedding night, spent in a modest hotel in a town whose name Adelaide immediately forgot, was tender and sweet. Wade took his time, making sure Adelaide felt safe and cherished, and afterward they lay tangled together talking until dawn. "I am going to spend the rest of my life making you happy," Wade promised, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "You already do," Adelaide replied, "just by being exactly who you are." They reached Silver Creek in late October, when the aspen trees were turning gold and the air had that crisp bite that promised winter was coming. Silver Creek was tiny, just a general store, a blacksmith, a small church, and a scattering of houses and ranches spread across the rolling foothills. The nearest significant town was 20 miles away, which suited Adelaide perfectly. The more isolated, the less likely anyone would hear about her past. Wade purchased 160 acres under the Homestead Act, land that consisted of a mix of prairie grass and rocky foothills, with a creek running through the property. There was no house, no barn, nothing but land and potential, but to Adelaide it was perfect. They spent the first months living in a tent while Wade built a small cabin. Adelaide helped however she could, holding boards steady, passing tools, cooking meals over the campfire. She had never done physical labor like this before, and her hands blistered and her muscles ached, but she felt more accomplished than she ever had sitting in a parlor doing needlework. The cabin was simple. 2 rooms, a fireplace, a wooden floor, and a roof that Wade promised would keep out the snow. It was not much, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and their own sweat. Their nearest neighbors, the Carmichael family, lived 3 miles away. Tom Carmichael and his wife Sarah had 2 young sons and had been homesteading for 5 years. They welcomed Wade and Adelaide warmly, asking no questions about their past. simply accepting them as fellow homesteaders trying to carve out a life in difficult country. "You picked good land," Tom told Wade as they helped build the cabin. "Creek never runs dry, good grass for cattle, and sheltered enough that you will not get the worst of the winter winds." "We appreciate the help," Wade said, hammering another board into place. "Once we are settled, I would be happy to return the favor however you need." "I will hold you to that come spring," Tom said with a grin. "Always more work than hands to do it." Sarah Carmichael took Adelaide under her wing, teaching her practical skills that Adelaide's genteel upbringing had never included. How to make soap, how to preserve vegetables, how to tell when a chicken was broody and ready to hatch eggs. Adelaide soaked up the knowledge gratefully, determined to be a good homesteader's wife. As winter settled over the foothills, Adelaide and Wade nestled into their new life. They spent evenings by the fireplace, Wade carving and Adelaide reading aloud from her precious books. They made love frequently, learning each other's bodies, growing more comfortable and adventurous as their marriage deepened. Adelaide had never known marriage could be like this. Easy and passionate, comfortable and exciting all at once. In late December, Adelaide realized her monthly bleeding had not come. She waited another month before saying anything to Wade, afraid to hope, afraid that she might be wrong. But when February arrived with no sign of her courses, she could no longer deny the truth. "Wade," she said one evening as they sat by the fire, "I think I am pregnant." Wade's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "Are you certain as I can be? My courses have not come in 3 months and I have been sick in the mornings." She put a hand on her still flat stomach. "I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." Wade crossed the small room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "A baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Adelaide, we are going to have a family." She clung to him, joy and fear warring in her heart. "What if something goes wrong? What if?" "Nothing is going to go wrong," Wade said fiercely. "You are not cursed. There is no such thing. This baby will be healthy and perfect, and you will be a wonderful mother, and we will be so happy. Do you hear me? We will be happy." Adelaide chose to believe him. What else could she do? She had already gambled everything on this life, on this man. She might as well gamble on hope as well. The pregnancy progressed without incident. Sarah Carmichael, who had birthed 2 babies of her own, gave Adelaide advice and reassurance. The small community of Silver Creek rallied around them, the women bringing food and baby clothes, the men helping Wade expand the cabin to include a proper bedroom and a loft for the baby. Adelaide's body changed, swelling with new life, and Wade treated her like precious glass, insisting she rest while he took on extra work. Adelaide felt cherished and protected, feelings she had never experienced with her previous husbands. In late September of 1879, just over a year after they had left Wichita, Adelaide went into labor. Sarah Carmichael served as midwife, her experienced hands guiding Adelaide through the pain and fear. Wade paced outside the cabin, too anxious to sit still, wearing a path in the dirt. After 8 hours of labor, Adelaide gave birth to a healthy baby boy with a strong set of lungs and a shock of dark hair. Sarah wrapped the baby and placed him in Adelaide's arms, and Adelaide looked down at her son and felt her heart expand to dimensions she had not known were possible. Wade burst into the cabin the moment Sarah gave permission, his face wild with worry until he saw Adelaide sitting up, exhausted but smiling, holding their baby. "Is he?" Wade could not seem to finish the sentence. "He is perfect," Adelaide said. "Come meet your son." Wade sat on the edge of the bed, his large, calloused hands trembling as he reached out to touch the baby's tiny fingers. "He is so small. He will grow. We will raise him strong and healthy and happy." Adelaide looked up at her husband, tears streaming down her face. "We did it, Wade. We made a family." Wade kissed her forehead, then the baby's. What should we name him? They had discussed names endlessly during the pregnancy. "I want to name him Thomas James Robert," Adelaide said quietly, "for the 3 men who came before you. They were not great loves, but they were part of my story, and I do not want to forget them. And I want to give him a middle name of his own, Samuel. Thomas James Robert Samuel Johnson." Wade's eyes were suspiciously bright. "That is a lot of name for such a small person. He will grow into it. We can call him Sam." "Sam Johnson." Wade tested the name. "I like it. Welcome to the world, Sam." The baby, as if recognizing his name, opened his eyes and looked at his parents with the unfocused gaze of a newborn. Adelaide felt a surge of fierce protectiveness. This child would know nothing of curses or gossip. He would grow up surrounded by love and the wide open spaces of Colorado. He would be free in a way Adelaide had never been. The first year of Sam's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless work. Wade proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with the baby when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, singing off key lullabies that somehow always worked. Adelaide discovered that she loved being a mother, loved watching Sam grow and change, loved seeing Wade's features reflected in their son's face. By the time Sam turned 1, Wade and Adelaide had built a successful small ranch. They had 20 cattle, a dozen chickens, 2 pigs, and 3 horses. It was not much compared to the large ranches, but it was enough to support their small family with a little left over to save. The community of Silver Creek celebrated Sam's first birthday with a gathering at the Carmichaels' larger home. Adelaide baked a cake, and Sam destroyed it with gleeful enthusiasm, smearing frosting everywhere and making all the adults laugh. Watching her son surrounded by friends and neighbors who loved him, Adelaide felt as if her heart might burst from happiness. That night, after putting a very tired Sam to bed, Adelaide and Wade sat on their porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you ever think about Wichita?" Wade asked. Adelaide considered the question. "Sometimes. I wonder if they know we are still alive and happy. I wonder if they feel foolish for believing in a curse that never existed. Mostly, I am just grateful we left. This life, here with you and Sam, is everything I always wanted but never dared to hope for." Wade pulled her close. "You know what the best part is? This is just the beginning. We have decades ahead of us, Adelaide. Decades of building this ranch, watching Sam grow up, maybe having more children, growing old together." "More children," Adelaide teased. "Are you saying one is not enough?" "I am saying that I love being a father. I love our family. If you want more children, I would be honored. If you are happy with just Sam, then so am I. As long as I have you, I have everything I need." Adelaide kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. "Let us see what the future brings. Right now, I am content with exactly what we have." But the future had more in store for them than contentment. 2 years after Sam was born, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she felt no fear, only excitement. The pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect. And in the spring of 1882, she gave birth to a daughter they named Grace Ellen Johnson. Grace had Wade's blue eyes and Adelaide's auburn hair, and from the moment she was born, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. Wade, who had been a devoted father to Sam, became utterly besotted with his daughter. Adelaide would often find him simply staring at Grace as she slept, wonder written across his face. Sam, now 3 years old, was initially skeptical of the new baby but quickly warmed to her, especially when she began to smile and respond to his antics. Adelaide loved watching her children together, loved the family they were building. The ranch continued to prosper. Wade had a gift for horse breeding, and word spread through the region about the quality of his stock. They were never wealthy, but they were comfortable, with enough to feed and clothe their growing family and slowly improve their property. Wade built a proper barn, expanded the cabin again to add more bedrooms, dug a well closer to the house. In 1884, Adelaide gave birth to their third child, another son they named Daniel. The cabin was full of noise and laughter and chaos, and Adelaide thrived in the midst of it. This was the life she had always dreamed of: children running through the house, a husband who loved her completely, a home that was truly hers. Silver Creek remained blissfully unaware of Adelaide's history. The few new arrivals who came to the area knew her only as Mrs. Johnson, Wade's wife, mother of 3, respected member of the small community. The specter of the curse faded until it seemed like something from another lifetime, a bad dream that had no power in the bright light of day. Years passed in the rhythm of ranch life, calving season, planting, harvest, the hard work of winter. Sam grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved reading as much as his mother did. Grace was fearless and adventurous, trailing after her father and begging to help with the horses. Daniel was the baby, sweet and affectionate, content to sit in Adelaide's lap and listen to stories. On their 10th wedding anniversary in October of 1888, Wade surprised Adelaide with a new rocking chair he had crafted himself, carving intricate patterns into the wood during the long winter evenings. "It is beautiful," Adelaide said, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "Wade, you did not have to do this. I wanted to. You spend so much time rocking the children, reading to them. I wanted you to have something special, something that shows how much I appreciate everything you do for our family." Adelaide sat in the chair, testing the smooth rocking motion. "Do you remember our wedding day? How everyone in Wichita was so certain you would be dead within a year," Wade laughed. I remember thinking they were all fools for not seeing what I saw, a woman who deserved to be loved, who deserved happiness." "You gave me that," Adelaide said softly. "You gave me everything I never knew I could have. 10 years ago I was cursed Adelaide Barrett, and now I am just Adelaide Johnson, wife and mother, and I have never been happier." "We have built a good life," Wade agreed. "A life worth fighting for." That winter brought heavy snows, and the family spent long evenings gathered around the fireplace. Wade taught Sam to carve wood, while Grace pestered him with endless questions about horses, and Daniel fell asleep in Adelaide's arms. These were the moments Adelaide treasured, ordinary, peaceful, perfect in their simplicity. In the spring of 1889, when Sam was 10, Grace was 7, and Daniel was 5, tragedy finally struck the Johnson family. But it was not Adelaide's husband who faced danger. It was Adelaide herself. She had gone into Silver Creek to purchase supplies, riding alone as she often did. The children were with Sarah Carmichael for the day, and Wade was out checking on the cattle in the far pasture. On her way home, Adelaide's horse stumbled in a prairie dog hole, throwing her hard onto the rocky ground. She must have hit her head, because the next thing she knew, she was lying in her own bed with Sarah Carmichael pressing a cool cloth to her forehead and Wade gripping her hand so tightly it hurt. "Adelaide," Wade said, his voice hoarse. "Thank God. You have been unconscious for 2 days." "The children," Adelaide managed to ask. "They are fine. They are with Tom. How do you feel?" Adelaide took stock of her body. Her head throbbed viciously and her left arm felt strange. "My arm." "It is broken," Sarah said gently, "and you have a nasty concussion. But the doctor says you will recover fully. You just need rest." The next weeks were frustrating for Adelaide. who was used to constant activity. She had to rely on Wade and Sarah for everything while her arm healed and the headaches slowly subsided. But it also gave her time to think, time to appreciate what she had built with Wade. One evening, with her arm still in a sling but feeling much better, Adelaide sat on the porch with Wade watching the children play in the yard. "I was so afraid," Wade admitted. "When Tom Carmichael brought you home unconscious, blood on your face, I thought. I thought maybe the curse was real after all. I thought maybe I was about to lose you." "But you did not," Adelaide said. "Because there is no curse, Wade. There never was, just bad luck that ran its course years ago. We are safe, our children are safe, we have nothing to fear." "I know that in my head," Wade said. "But in my heart, when I saw you like that, I knew how close I came to losing everything that matters. Adelaide, you are my whole world. You and the children, this life we have built. I cannot imagine existing without you." Adelaide leaned her head on his shoulder. "You will not have to. I am not going anywhere. We are going to grow old together, just like you said. We are going to watch our children grow up and get married and give us grandchildren. We are going to sit on this porch when we are ancient and gray and remember all the years we have had together." "Promise me," Wade said. "I promise." And Adelaide kept that promise. She recovered fully from her accident and life returned to its normal rhythm. The children grew, the ranch prospered, and the years rolled past in a blur of seasons and celebrations and the ordinary miracles of daily life. Sam grew into a tall, serious young man who went away to study law, determined to use his mind rather than his hands to make his way in the world. Grace married a rancher from the next county over, a good man who loved her wildness and strength. Daniel took over more of the ranch work, content to follow in his father's footsteps. By 1905, Wade and Adelaide were in their 50s, grandparents several times over, their hair turning gray and their bodies bearing the marks of decades of hard work. They sat on their porch as they had done countless evenings before, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Do you ever regret it?" Adelaide asked. "Marrying me, leaving everything behind, coming here?" Wade looked at her in surprise. "Not for a single moment. How could I regret the best decision I ever made? I just wonder sometimes if you gave up too much. You could have married someone without my history, someone the town approved of. You could have had an easier life." "Easier is not better," Wade said firmly. He reached over and took her hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of decades of practice. "Adelaide, you are the love of my life. You gave me 3 beautiful children. You built this ranch with me. You have been my partner in every way that matters. I would not trade a single day of our life together for all the ease in the world." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. After all these years, Wade could still make her feel cherished and valued. "I love you," she said simply. "I have loved you since that first day you knocked on my door and told me you did not believe in curses. And I have loved you since I first saw you in that general store, standing straight and proud despite everyone treating you like a pariah. I knew then you were someone special. I am just grateful I was smart enough to pursue you." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the first stars appeared. Inside the house, they could hear Daniel's wife preparing supper, could hear the laughter of their youngest grandchildren playing. The house they had built with their own hands was full of life and love, exactly as Adelaide had always dreamed. "We did it," Adelaide said softly. "We built the life we wanted. We proved them all wrong." "We did more than that," Wade replied. "We found something rare and precious, true love, the kind that weathers every storm and comes out stronger. Not everyone gets that, Adelaide. We are lucky." "We are blessed," Adelaide corrected. Wade smiled and leaned over to kiss her. And it was as sweet as their first kiss, as meaningful as their wedding day, as perfect as every moment they had shared in the 27 years since he had walked into her life and changed everything. The years continued to pass, gentler now that their children were grown and the heavy work of building the ranch was behind them. Wade taught Daniel everything he knew about horses and cattle and the land. Adelaide spent her time with her grandchildren, reading to them as she had once read to their parents, telling them stories and teaching them to see the magic in everyday life. In 1910, Sam returned home for a long visit, bringing his own wife and children. Grace came with her husband and their 4 children. Daniel and his family already lived on the ranch in a second house they had built a few years earlier. For 2 glorious weeks, the ranch was full of noise and chaos and the laughter of children. On the last evening before Sam and Grace had to return to their own homes, the entire family gathered on the porch. The adults sat in chairs while the grandchildren ran around the yard chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk. "I want you all to know something," Adelaide said, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet evening. "I want you to know the story of how your grandfather and I met." She told them everything, about the 3 husbands who died, about the town that called her cursed, about the loneliness and fear. She told them about Wade appearing in her life like a miracle, about his refusal to believe in curses, about their wedding day and the hostile crowd and the brave decision to start over somewhere new. The adult children listened in stunned silence. They had known their mother's life before Colorado had been difficult, but not the full extent of it. The grandchildren listened with wide eyes, turning the story into a fairy tale in their minds. "So you see," Adelaide finished, looking at Wade with all the love of their decades together shining in her eyes, "your grandfather saved me, not from a curse because there was no curse, but from a life of loneliness and fear. He saw me when no one else would. He believed in me when the whole world had turned its back. He gave me all of you, this family, this life, this love." "That is the most romantic thing I have ever heard," Grace said, wiping tears from her eyes. Sam nodded. "You two have always been my model for what a marriage should be." Now I understand why. Daniel, who had heard pieces of the story before but never the whole thing, simply reached over and gripped his father's shoulder. The gesture said everything that words could not. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house was finally quiet, Adelaide and Wade lay in their bed and held each other close. "Thank you," Adelaide whispered. "For what? For everything. For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me this life. Adelaide, you gave me just as much. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You made me happier than I ever knew I could be. If anything, I should be thanking you." "Then we will thank each other," Adelaide said, "and count ourselves lucky to have found each other in this big, wild world." They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, as they had done thousands of times before, and would do thousands of times more. Wade Johnson passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1918 at the age of 67. He had lived a long, full life surrounded by family and love. Adelaide was 64 and devastated by the loss, but also grateful. They had had 40 years together, 40 years of happiness and partnership. Wade had died of nothing more sinister than old age and a tired heart. There was no accident, no bizarre tragedy, no curse. Just the natural end of a life well lived. At his funeral, attended by dozens of people from Silver Creek and beyond, all 3 children spoke about their father's kindness, his strength, his unwavering love for their mother. Adelaide stood at the grave and thought about the young cowboy who had walked into her life in Wichita so many years ago, who had looked at her with clear blue eyes and told her he did not believe in curses. "You were right," she whispered to the casket. "There was no curse." There was only bad luck that ended the day I met you. Thank you for giving me a lifetime of good luck in return. Thank you for everything." Adelaide lived another 12 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. She spent her final years in the house Wade had built, rocking in the chair he had made for her, reading her beloved books and telling stories about the man who had saved her from a fate worse than any curse: a life without love. When Adelaide Johnson passed away in 1930 at the age of 76, she died with a smile on her face and the names of her children and grandchildren on her lips. She was buried next to Wade under a wide Colorado sky, their gravestones simple, but bearing an inscription that told their whole story. Wade Johnson, 1851–1918. Beloved husband and father, he did not believe in curses. Adelaide Johnson, 1854–1930. Beloved wife and mother, he proved her free. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down from Daniel to his children and their children after them. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the work was done and the family gathered on the porch, someone would tell the story of Adelaide and Wade, of the cursed widow and the cowboy who risked everything for love. It became a family legend, a reminder that courage and love can overcome even the darkest circumstances, that sometimes the greatest act of bravery is simply choosing to believe in happiness when the whole world tells you it is impossible. And in Silver Creek, where Adelaide and Wade had built their life together, people still spoke of them decades after their deaths. They spoke of the love that had been visible in every glance they shared, in the way Wade's face lit up whenever Adelaide entered a room, in the way Adelaide's hand would reach for Wade's without conscious thought. They spoke of a marriage that had weathered every challenge and emerged stronger, of a love that had defied gossip and fear, and proved that curses held no power against the determination of two hearts beating as one. The story of Adelaide Barrett and Wade Johnson became more than just a family history. It became a testament to the power of love, to the courage it takes to see past fear and prejudice, to the rewards that wait for those brave enough to risk everything for happiness. In a hard land that demanded strength and resilience, their love had been the strongest thing of all, outlasting drought and hardship and the cruel whispers of superstition. And perhaps that was the real magic, not that Wade had broken a curse, but that he had never believed in it in the first place. He had looked at Adelaide and seen only a woman deserving of love, and in doing so, he had given her something far more powerful than protection from bad luck. He had given her the courage to love again, to hope again, to believe that she deserved happiness. In the end, there had never been a curse at all. There had only been terrible coincidence and the town's need to make sense of senseless tragedy. But there had also been Wade Johnson, a cowboy with honest eyes and a stubborn heart, who had walked into Adelaide's life and said the words she needed most to hear: "I will risk the fourth chance." And in taking that risk, he had won everything that mattered. They both had.